The reading of my grandfather Mark's will was the most humiliating day of my life. I sat there and watched my family carve up his legacy like vultures. My father, James, got the Harrison Group, the newspaper he'd already been running into the ground, valued at $50 million. My mother, Laura, I got the $35 million Beacon Hill estate. My brother, Ryan, the golden boy. I've got a stock portfolio worth $10 million. They were all trying, and failing, to hide their smiles. Then the lawyer cleared his throat and looked at me. And to my granddaughter, Gwen, I leave this envelope. The room erupted in quiet, muffled laughter. My brother Ryan smirked. Great. Probably a library card. My mother just patted my knee, her voice dripping with pity. Don't worry, honey. You know how your grandfather was. Just his little sense of humor. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? The one who's always underestimated, always overlooked? Let me know your story in the comments below, because you will not believe what was actually in that envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't ask why. I just kept my expression perfectly blank, my spine straight. I stood up, took the envelope from the lawyer's hand, and walked out of that mahogany-paneled conference room. I could feel their eyes on my back, and I heard my brother Ryan let out one last chuckle, just as the heavy door clicked shut behind me. I walked down the marble hallway, my heels clicking, and didn't stop until I was inside the elevator and the polished steel doors had closed, sealing me in silence. Only then did I lean back against the wall. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness. It was something else. It was adrenaline. I looked down at the simple, cream-colored envelope. My name, Gwen, was written on the front, in his familiar, strong handwriting. I tore it open. Inside, there was no sentimental letter. There was a first-class plane ticket, Boston to Zurich, Switzerland, departing tomorrow. Tucked behind the ticket was a heavy, black metal business card. It was engraved with just 2 lines, Elena Sanchez, Trust Manager, Zurich. And behind that, a single piece of folded paper, a bank statement summary for the Harrison Legacy Trust. The balance made my head go light. I had to read it 3 times. $420 million. At the very bottom, scrawled in my grandfather's ink, was one last message. It wasn't "I love you." It was, "Time to play chess. Gwen, never trust the front page." A cold, sharp clarity cut through all the years of humiliation. This wasn't an insult. This was an assignment. I didn't go back to the conference room. I didn't call my mother to hear her fake apologies. I walked out the front door of the building, past the giant lion statues, and into the Boston afternoon. My phone was already buzzing. The family group chat. Photos of Ryan with his stock portfolio. My cousin Megan, who'd also gotten a small fortune, was planning a party. My mother sent a text. "Are you okay? Honey, we'll take you out to dinner later." I put my phone on silent. I went back to my tiny studio apartment. The one I paid for with my nonprofit coordinator salary. The one my family always called quaint. I looked at the eviction notice I'd been stressing about just yesterday. I laughed. I packed a carry-on bag, put my passport next to the plane ticket, and called a car. 45 minutes later, I was walking into Logan Airport, leaving my old life, and my family, behind me. The 8-hour flight over the Atlantic was the first time I'd been able to breathe in 26 years. As the plane climbed above the clouds, I finally had time to process. Not the money that still felt like a dream, but the why. Why the secrecy? Why the public humiliation? And then, as I stared out the window at the endless blue, it all clicked into place. My grandfather wasn't just a businessman. He was a student of human nature. He knew his family. I realized I hadn't just been the quiet one. I was a designated character in their script. Psychologists call it a narcissistic family system. And my family was a textbook case. My brother, Ryan, was the golden child. He could do no wrong. He was the brilliant future CEO. Even though his visionary digital projects were bleeding the company dry, he got praise for breathing. My mother, Laura, was the enabler, basking in the glow of her perfect son and her powerful husband. And I was the scapegoat. Every time I questioned one of Ryan's unethical story ideas, I was told I was too sensitive. Every time I asked my father, James, why the newspaper was taking on so much debt, I was told I was too naive and didn't understand how real business worked. It wasn't that they didn't see me. It was that they needed me to be the failure. My small apartment. My nonprofit job. My sentimental nature. It was all proof that they were the successful ones. The laughter in that conference room wasn't just cruelty. It was relief. It was the final public confirmation that I was exactly who they'd always told me. I was the one who gets left with an envelope. I leaned my head back against the seat. I wasn't sad. I was cold. The entire structure of my life had been a lie. A toxic system designed to keep me small. And my grandfather had just handed me the antidote. I pictured them back in Boston. Right now. They'd be at the Beacon Hill estate. Popping champagne. My mother would be planning renovations. Ryan would be boasting about his new stock portfolio. They'd all be laughing about poor Gwen and her mystery trip to Switzerland. And I knew. In that moment. They wouldn't have even read the fine print. They'd be celebrating. And right about now, after the second bottle of champagne, my father would be clearing his throat. He'd be dropping the first bomb. He'd have to. He'd tell them that the $50 million company he just inherited was a house of cards. That it was drowning in debt. That their new life was already sinking. I closed my eyes. They had no idea. They thought they were rich. I was the only one who knew the truth. I was the only one holding the life raft. And I wasn't in any hurry to throw it. And just as I had predicted, the celebration back in Boston had already gone sour. My father, James, finally dropped the bomb. After the second bottle of champagne, he'd cleared his throat. So, he said, there's a small issue with the paper's finances. My mother, Laura, stopped admiring her $35 million estate. What do you mean? An issue. We're worth a fortune. James, stop being dramatic. The paper isn't worth $50 million, he admitted. His voice small. That's the book value. But the debt? Ryan's digital projects. Your renovations? Laura. I had to leverage everything. We're not just in debt. We're on the verge of default. The room went silent. My brother Ryan, the golden child, just scoffed. He wasn't sentimental. So we sell? That rival conglomerate, HMG, has been trying to buy us for a year. Their offer is more than enough to cover the debt and still leave us with millions. My father actually hesitated. For a second. A flicker of my grandfather's morality surfaced. But Ryan, HMG, they'll gut the place. They'll fire everyone. They'll turn the Harrison Group into a tabloid. It's Grandpa's legacy. Ryan laughed. It was the same cold, dismissive laugh I'd heard in the lawyer's office. Grandpa's legacy is old news. It's outdated. Who cares about journalistic integrity in this market? Profit is profit. Let's take the money and run. My mother, Laura, nodded immediately. Ryan's right. James, what's the point of a legacy if you're bankrupt? Sell it. They had just proven it. They were actively, enthusiastically, planning to betray the one thing my grandfather had spent his entire life building. Meanwhile, I was landing in Zurich. A black Mercedes was waiting for me. It didn't take me to a bank. It took me to a sleek, minimalist tower of glass and steel that seemed to disappear into the clouds. I was escorted to the top floor, into a high-tech conference room that looked more like a mission control center. A woman stood to greet me. She was in her 40s, impeccably dressed in a sharp, dark suit, with an air of absolute, no-nonsense authority. Miss Gwen, welcome. I am Elena Sanchez. We didn't shake hands. She gestured for me to sit. I'll be direct, she said, her voice crisp. We have a lot to cover. The $420 million you saw on that statement. That is simply your liquid disbursement account. An allowance, if you will. My breath caught. An allowance, she continued. Your grandfather, Mark, was a very methodical man. He knew his son's limitations. For decades. He knew James would one day run the Harrison Group into the ground. She tapped a command on the tablet built into the table. The entire wall in front of us lit up. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a global map. A complex web of corporations and holding companies. Your grandfather spent the last 25 years secretly diverting the true assets of his empire into this trust. A trust that only you could activate. luxury hotel chains in Dubai and Kyoto, controlling interests in media and technology funds, private equity. As of this morning, Miss Gwen, your trust's net value is approximately $2.5 billion. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I just sat there, staring at the numbers. And I finally understood. My grandfather hadn't just given me money. He had given me a fortress. He knew James would destroy the company, Elena said, her voice softening just a fraction. So he built this ark. For you. He was protecting his real legacy. I looked at Elena. The shock was fading, replaced by that same cold, sharp clarity from the elevator. I knew exactly what I had to do. $2.5 billion. The number was so big it didn't feel real. It was just static. But Elena Sanchez wasn't celebrating. She was working. Your grandfather left very specific and detailed instructions, she said, tapping the tablet built into the conference table. The wall in front of us, the one that had shown the map of my new empire, flickered. It was replaced by a spreadsheet, so dense it made my eyes hurt. These are the financials for your hotel chains in Dubai and Kyoto, the real estate in London, and these, she highlighted a new section, are the media and technology funds. She was speaking quickly, using terms like EBITDA, leveraged assets, and debt covenants. I could feel her watching me. She was testing me. She was probably expecting me to be confused, to be the naive nonprofit girl my family always saw. She was probably expecting me to ask about the pretty hotel pictures, but I wasn't confused. My eyes scanned the columns, automatically skipping past the big revenue numbers and focusing on the small print, the liabilities, the interest rates, the due dates. And suddenly, it hit me so clearly I could almost smell the old newsprint and pipe tobacco from his office. I was 16. I was in my grandfather Mark's real office. The one at the newspaper. Not the one at the house. He'd pulled out the real ledger for the Harrison Group. Not the simplified, glossy report my father always paraded around. They'll all look at the front page. Gwen, he'd said, his voice quiet. They'll look at the headlines. The big, flashy numbers. That's what your father and brother do. He tapped the last column on the page, the one filled with negative figures and parentheticals. But the real story, he said, tapping it again. The truth is always written in the debt. Who owes what to whom? And why? That's the chessboard. Gwen, that's the only thing that matters. You remember that? He blinked. I was back in the Zurich conference room. My voice was steady. The debt on the Kyoto property? I said, pointing to a line item. It's structured as a balloon payment due in 3 years. We need to start refinancing that now, to take advantage of the current interest rates. We shouldn't wait. Elena's poker face didn't change, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. It was respect. She simply nodded. I will have the team begin the analysis immediately. I took a deep breath. Okay. Now for the real problem. The Harrison Group. I laid it all out. My father's complete mismanagement. My brother's idiotic, expensive projects. The massive, crushing debt. And their plan? Right now. To sell the entire company to our most hostile rival. HM. They're going to destroy it, I said, the first real anger seeping into my voice. They're selling his legacy for parts just to save themselves. I see, Elena said. I need you to form a new shell company. I said, the plan forming as I spoke. An anonymous holding firm based right here in Switzerland. I want you to prepare a cash offer. We're going to buy it. We're going to outbid HMG. I was ready for a fight. I was ready to plan a bidding war. To leverage my new, insane wealth. To crush them. But Elena just smiled. It was the first time I'd seen her expression crack. It was a thin, sharp, dangerous smile. A bidding war will not be necessary. Miss Gwen, she said. Why not? HMG has deep pockets. Because, she said, tapping one more button on her console. Your grandfather already prepared for this. You seem to have inherited his love for the debt ledger. You just haven't read the most important one yet. A bidding war won't be necessary, Elena said, that thin, dangerous smile playing on her lips. Why not? I asked. HMG is a massive conglomerate. They'll just keep raising their offer. Because you're still thinking like a buyer. Miss Gwen. You're not. You're the creditor. I stared at her. I don't understand. Your father, James, has been borrowing money recklessly for almost a decade, she explained, her voice as sharp as glass. He leveraged the Harrison Group. He leveraged the Beacon Hill estate. He leveraged every asset my grandfather ever built. $60 million in total. So, HMG's offer. It just covers the debt, I said, the pieces clicking into place. They'll be left with almost nothing. Correct. But that's not the point. The point, she said, leaning forward, is who owns that debt. She let the question hang in the air. 5 years ago, she continued, your grandfather saw the writing on the wall. He knew James was a lost cause. So, he instructed the trust to acquire that $60 million debt. It was purchased from the original lenders, quietly, and moved into an anonymous, private investment firm. A cold realization washed over me. A firm based in Switzerland. Elena tapped the screen. The name appeared. Zurich Legacy Holdings. Which is, she added, a wholly owned subsidiary of your trust. I just sat there. I couldn't breathe. It was brilliant. It was the most ruthless, beautiful, and strategic move I had ever seen. The will. It was all a show. My grandfather hadn't given them the $50 million newspaper or the $35 million estate. He'd handed them a test. It was the poisoned chalice. He'd given them an inheritance that looked incredibly valuable on the front page, knowing they were too arrogant, too greedy, and too superficial to read the fine print. They were blinded by the big numbers. They never, ever thought to check the debt ledger. They had been celebrating, laughing, and planning their new lives based on assets they hadn't really owned in 5 years. My voice came out as a whisper. So, they own nothing. They are tenants. Elena corrected, her voice void of emotion. And as of this quarter, they are in default. She looked at me. You do not have to buy the Harrison Group, Miss Gwen? I finished the sentence for her, and my voice was no longer a whisper. It was cold. I just have to foreclose on it. Yes. And on the Beacon Hill estate, you hold the note for everything. This wasn't a bidding war. This was an eviction. Elena, I said, standing up. Prepare the paperwork. Serve them with the default notice immediately. I'm flying back to Boston tonight. 1 week later, I wasn't in my old studio apartment. I was in a penthouse suite at the Four Seasons, overlooking the Boston Common. Across town, in the Beacon Hill estate, my family was in a full-blown panic. The deal with HMG was supposed to close today. My father was waiting for a $75 million wire transfer that would save his skin. But instead of a wire transfer, a courier had just delivered a certified letter. It was a formal, non-negotiable notice of default and immediate foreclosure from Zurich Legacy Holdings. Their $75 million payday. Gone. The $50 million company. Gone. The $35 million house they were sitting in. Gone. I could picture the scene. My mother, Laura, probably hysterical, realizing her status was built on nothing. My brother, Ryan, the golden child, finally silent. His $10 million stock portfolio suddenly worthless against the family's crushing debt. And my father, James, just staring at that legal document. The name, Zurich Legacy Holdings, burning into his brain. Finally realizing that the chess game my grandfather mentioned, he had already lost. He never should have laughed at that envelope. The emergency board meeting for the Harrison Group was a disaster. I know, because I was watching it on a live feed in my hotel suite. My father, James, was pacing the room, his face a blotchy, terrified, red. My mother, Laura, was in a full-blown hysterical panic. And my brother, Ryan, the golden child, looked like he was going to be sick. The foreclosure notice from Zurich Legacy Holdings was on the table, right next to the now useless offer from HMG. We're ruined, my father yelled, slamming his fist on the table. That Swiss firm. They came out of nowhere. They own everything. We're going to lose the house. The paper. All of it. Ryan just kept muttering. This isn't possible. This isn't possible. My mother looked at my father, her eyes filled with a venom I'd never seen. You, You did this, you and your golden boy and his stupid, expensive projects. You ruined me. That was my cue. I hung up the feed, stood up, and straightened the jacket of my $5,000 suit. Elena Sanchez met me at the door. Are you ready? Miss Gwen. More than ready. We rode the elevator down and walked across the street to the Harrison Group building. The lobby I used to feel so small in now just looked dated. We didn't need to be announced. We walked straight back, through the newsroom, and pushed open the heavy oak doors to the boardroom. The argument stopped instantly. All three of them froze. Their faces, a perfect picture of shock. My father found his voice first. It was a roar. Gwen, what the hell are you doing here? Get out! This is a private family meeting. I walked calmly to the head of the table, the seat my grandfather always sat in. Elena stood silently behind me. Hello, Father, I said. My voice was cold, and it echoed in the suddenly silent room. I believe this is my meeting. What are you talking about? My mother snapped. Who is this woman? This, I said, is Elena Sanchez. She's the primary representative for Zurich Legacy Holdings. I let that sink in. I watched the confusion on their faces, the gears turning as they tried to connect Gwen with Zurich. Ryan laughed, but it was a nervous, cracking sound. What? Did you get a job as her assistant? Did you come here to beg for us? Gwen, it's too late for that. I looked at him, really looked at him. The golden child. He just looked pale and weak. I'm not her assistant. Ryan, I said. I'm her employer. I let that hang in the air for 1, 2, 3 seconds. The Harrison Legacy Trust. The one my grandfather left me. Owns Zurich Legacy Holdings. The $420 million envelope you all laughed at, that was just my pocket money. My full inheritance is $2.5 billion. Silence. My mother's hand went to her pearls. My father gripped the back of his chair. The debt, I continued. The $60 million you used to mortgage this company and the Beacon Hill estate. I own it. I have for 5 years. My grandfather's final test. And you all. I looked at each of them. Failed. My father's face went from red to a terrifying pale gray. He finally understood. Gwen, he whispered. Please. You're my daughter. I'm your creditor. I snapped. I slid a thick stack of documents across the polished table. This is the full foreclosure notice. Your $60 million debt is due. Effective. Now. My mother let out a small shriek. No, you can't. You wouldn't. We're your family. The family that laughed me out of a room, I asked. The family that was going to sell this paper for parts. I pushed a second, smaller stack of papers toward them. But I'm offering you a choice. These are your resignations. My father's, my mother's, and my brother's. You will sign them. You will clean out your desks. And you will walk out of this building. Forever. Ryan, defiant to the last, snarled. And if we don't, what? You'll sue us. If you don't? I said, my voice dropping to a calm, lethal whisper. I will execute the full foreclosure. Right now. On the company. On the estate. On every asset you think you own. I will take everything. I will leave you with nothing but the designer clothes on your backs. The choice is yours. 1 month later, I sat in my grandfather's office. My office. I was now president and publisher of the Harrison Group. My first act as owner had been to inject $100 million from the trust, wiping out the debt. My second act was to fire every single one of Ryan's incompetent cronies. My third was to reinvest another $50 million into what my grandfather had always valued: real, investigative journalism. As for my family, they lost everything. The company, the house, the cars, the social status. I'd been generous. I hadn't taken everything. I'd left them just enough to move into a small, rented house out in the suburbs. They were completely cut off from the empire. I looked out the window at the Boston skyline. My phone was buzzing Elena, with an update on the Dubai hotels. I ignored it. Instead, I picked up the day's paper. The paper I had saved. The front page headline was bold: The Harrison Group returns to its commitment to truth. I didn't just win the chess game. I'd saved the board. And for the first time in my life, sitting in that old leather chair, I wasn't just wealthy. I was at peace. I had saved his real legacy.